What's going on, guys? And today we'll be talking about this news about the Phoenix Suns. Not only did they hire new Suns general manager Brian Gregory, my apology, guys, who addressed the media for the first time this past Tuesday. There is a belief around the league that the Suns will fill their coaching vacancy with a first-time NBA coach. Washington Wizards assistant coach Adam Caporn is among those expected to draw considerations for their job. And I like this one. It makes sense. And we'll talk about it. This is coming from my colleague, Michael Scotto at HoopsHype.com. Before we continue, I would like to hear what you guys have to say down below about the head coach vacancy. And hit that like and subscribe button. It'll help out the channel a ton. Now, Caporn was recently named head coach of the Australia Boomers men's national team after being an assistant for the program over the last 4 major tournaments campaigns, including winning a bronze medal at 2020 Tokyo Olympics. We've heard that they talked to Jordan Knott, Johnny Bryant, Royal Ivey, Ben Sullivan, Sean Sweeney, Jared Dudley, and we know Ott was a finalist versus Charles Lee for the Hornets job last year. He's credited with developing Evan Mobley this year, and prior he was with the Los Angeles Lakers. Johnny Bryant's another Cavaliers former Jazz assistant, good player developmental coach with strong ties to Donovan Mitchell, and he was with the Knicks before that, between Utah and, I believe, Cleveland. Royal Ivey, former NBA player, well-liked, relatable. He coached South Sudan as the national head coach recently in the Olympics. Ben Sullivan is a former Boston, now Houston assistant coach. Has worked under Ime Udoka, Joe Mazzulla, Mike Budenholzer, and Greg Popovich. Seems like he's technically from the Coach Bud tree, as he worked for Bud twice. Sean Sweeney, who is part of the Dallas Mavericks staff, is another player or another coach who was a finalist for the Detroit job that went to JB Bickerstaff last year. And we're also hearing his colleague Jared Dudley, who's also with the Mavericks, former player and former Suns player, is a guy that a lot of people have said is possibly a good assistant coach. The other day we reported that Michael said in a report Dave Bliss was drawing consideration, a Thunder's assistant coach, and a guy who's been on the radar for a while, Chris Quinn, Miami Heat's associate head coach, has been with the Heat for a while, almost 10 years, since being retired after a 7-year NBA career. David Yoger, James Borrego are in on this coaching search. According to the Stein line, Yoger won 50 games twice with the Grizzlies and made it to the semifinals. He's recently been a head coach with the Kings. He worked as a Sixers assistant coach, and then with the Bucks, he's a Doc Rivers guy. And James Borrego, coming from the Spurs lineage, is an offensive guru who recently had a stint with the Hornets as their head coach. Then his contract expired. They didn't keep him, and he went and has been an assistant with the Pelicans. And he remains with the Pelicans. And he's a potential candidate. So what do we think of this? Now, I think it's an interesting situation. Why? Because the Suns have had so many coaches: Monty Williams, Frank Vogel, Bud, and now whoever the heck they end up deciding to hire, because for some reason they go through coaches like people go through underwear in a week before they do laundry. And to me, I think that's crazy. It's absolutely crazy the way that they go about this, like in a bad way. And I don't know, like, how do you even get people convinced to go there as an organization? Obviously money, but it's just the lack of accountability. It's crazy. And I just don't think like a guy like Chris Quinn's going to go there. So to me, I believe it's just crazy to think that. So if we look at everybody, the only guys who have head coach experience, like in their prior, let's look at the outcome of their prior searches. So they had, and since 2013, Jeff Hornacek, first-time head coach. Earl Watson, first-time head coach. Jeff Hornacek was a former player, so was Earl Watson. Igor Kokoskov was a first-time NBA coach, but he was a European coach. Monty Williams had 5 years of head coach experience. Frank Vogel had 11 years and was an NBA champion. And then Mike Budenholzer, same thing. So historically, under previous owner, they had shown a willingness to hire first-time head coaches. We just said 3. But often, it seems like, I mean, first off, Hornacek did a good job in the early years. Watson was canned, but Monty Williams was hired. He was a seasoned coach, and he came in and he was able to do stuff. But it seems like Chris Paul might have had more of a reason there, even though he set the franchise record for 64 wins. The end of Monty's tenure was when new owner Matt Ishbia bought the team, made the bold call to fire Williams after a second round exit, indicating that Monty was not Ishbia's hire. The first coaching hire was Frank Vogel, which was a guy who was fresh off the title, 3 years removed with the Lakers. He was supposed to figure out the defense, but it was short-lived, whether due to injuries, roster imbalances, or failing to meet the lofty expectations. And then the Suns underperformed in 2024-2025 with Mike Budenholzer, another championship coach, was only to be fired after a season when the team fell short. So this sequence of Monty fired in 23, Vogel fired in 24, Budenholzer fired in 25 mean the Suns have now dismissed 3 veteran head coaches in as many years. It's a revolving door that mirrors the instability of the mid-2010s, albeit with much higher profile names. The current search shows a pattern break from those veteran hires. Phoenix is pivoting in a completely different direction by targeting a young first-time coach. In sense, it harkens back to the earlier Suns pattern of giving new coaches a chance, but with a twist. Unlike Earl Watson or Igor Kokoskov, who were inheriting rebuilds, this coach will inherit a win-now roster with championship expectations. It's unusual in the NBA for true contender to hand the keys to an unproven coach, but it's not without precedent. The Brooklyn Nets did so with the Steve Nash hiring in 2020, for example. The Suns seem to believe that after trying experienced voices and still not reaching a championship, fresh approach might yield different results. Another pattern, the Suns organization under Matt Ishbia values relationships, aka the Bartlestein one, and Monty Williams was someone who was a veteran coach. Earl Watson was a former Suns player, chosen in part for his ability to relate to younger players. Jeff Hornacek was a former Suns legend as a player. Now candidates like Jared Dudley, former Suns, and others with connections like Royal Ivy's bond with Durant, for example, suggest Phoenix is again considering the human element in familiarity. This is a deviation from hiring an outsider like Frank Vogel, who had no prior ties to the Suns or their stars. So, in conclusion, the Phoenix Suns' recent coaching hires show a pendulum swing from inexperienced coaches during rebuilds to experienced pedigree coaches during the Booker, Paul, and DeAndre Ayton, Monty Williams contention window to the 3 revolving door of coaches under the Booker, Beal, Durant window, and now seemingly back toward younger first-time coaches to usher in a new era. The common thread in failures, Watson, Kokoskov, Vogel, Budenholzer, Williams, might be a lack of alignment with either timing or personnel. Watson and Kokoskov were talented head coaches. Well, we don't know about Watson, but Igor is, I will say, and were placed in unstable situations. Vogel and Budenholzer were proven, but perhaps didn't mesh with the new owner's vision. Maybe didn't mesh with the locker room and the immediance of expectations. of championships were too lofty. The Suns are apparently now trying to find a happy medium, a coach who's hungry and innovative, but who can also bond with their stars and stay for the long haul, breaking the cycle of annual firings. Given that's what we talked about, I think Jared Dudley or Royal Ivy or somebody is going to get hired. I don't know. What do you guys think? I really think it's going to be interesting to see who's going to be the right person. Player coach would be good.